When you feel trapped, when every door around you seems to be closing and your heart whispers that there is no way forward, remember this: God doesn't need an existing door in order to open a new one. He simply says, "Be," and it is. Trust God. He specializes in making a way where there seems to be none. Your situation may look impossible today, but God can change everything in a moment. The key is to place your burden in His hands and watch how He turns your hopelessness into a blessing you never saw coming. There are times in life when the road ahead seems completely blocked. No matter what you try, nothing appears to work. In moments like these, your heart starts telling you that there is no path left to take. But don't forget that what seems impossible to you is never impossible for God. God can open doors in your life that you never imagined could exist. Very often, when someone reaches what feels like their lowest point, they are actually standing at the beginning of God's greatest help. The challenge is having the patience to wait for it. You may look at your circumstances and see no solution at all, but God sees your situation differently. He knows exactly when to help, how to help, and even who He will use to bring that help into your life. That is why trusting Him isn't just an option, it is a necessity. Without trust, every burden becomes heavier. With trust, even the darkest nights begin to shine with hope. When the road seems impossible, God is teaching you that your own strength was never meant to carry everything. Sometimes the path narrows, so you will turn back to Him, kneel in prayer, and ask for His help before anything else. We are often reminded that ease follows hardship, but sometimes that ease arrives in ways we never expected. In the end, it isn't really about the road itself. It is about who is in control of the road. Think about the countless people who came before you and believed their struggles would never end. Think about those who lived through poverty, sickness, or deep sorrow. When they placed their trust in God, they found more than a way to survive. They found a way to grow through their trials. Your struggle may look like a dead end today, but it could actually be a turning point that brings you closer to God than comfort ever could. God doesn't leave those who sincerely turn to Him in helplessness unless they choose to turn away from Him. So when you feel like you are standing in front of an impossible situation, stop for a moment and remind yourself, God doesn't abandon those who sincerely call on Him. What feels like a wall today may actually be a door waiting for His command to open. Sometimes that door opens immediately. Sometimes it takes time, but it always opens at the right moment and in the best way. Keep moving forward in faith. Keep trusting Him, because your trust in God may be the very thing that turns the impossible into reality. To truly trust God is more than simply saying, "I trust Him." It means living with a heart that is fully surrendered to His wisdom. No matter how carefully you plan or how strong you become, it means accepting that the final outcome belongs to Him alone. This kind of trust removes the fear of people, the fear of the future, and the fear of failure. When you truly understand that God is in control of everything, your heart finds a peace that nothing in this world can shake. Real trust brings effort and faith together. As the saying goes, you tie your camel and then leave the outcome in God's hands. Trust without effort turns into laziness. Effort without trust turns into pride. But when the two work together, a person lives in balance. You work as though everything depends on your effort, yet you trust as though everything depends on God. That balance is one of the greatest secrets to living a successful and peaceful life. Trust in God also changes the way you see difficulties. When one door closes, a person without trust often falls into panic and loses hope. But someone who places their trust in God understands that there is wisdom behind every closed door. That trust gives you patience while you wait, strength while you endure, and hope when you can't yet see what God is doing. It allows you to see challenges as lessons rather than disasters. One of the greatest strengths that comes from trusting God is freedom from the things that normally control people. People may disappoint you. Wealth may disappear. Health may decline. But a heart that depends on God won't collapse. This is why many righteous people who came before us had hearts richer than kings, even when they possessed very little. Their secret wasn't their wealth, their status, or their abilities. Their secret was that they trusted God more than they trusted themselves. If you want to experience that kind of strength, start with your everyday life. Place your worries, your family, your provision, and your future in God's hands. Do your part, but allow your heart to rest in His plan. That isn't weakness. It is strength. You are leaning on the one who has power over all things. The more you live with this trust, the lighter your burdens become. Even in your darkest moments, the path ahead begins to look brighter. Today, many people face situations that feel overwhelming. Some are carrying debts that seem impossible to repay. Others are facing illnesses that appear beyond healing. Some are struggling with relationships that look too broken to restore. Yet the Lord who parted the sea is the same Lord who hears your prayer in the quiet of the night. When your trust is sincere, He can open doors you never expected. He can create solutions where none seem to exist. And when every path appears closed, He can still lead you safely forward. God's help comes according to His timing, not ours. Sometimes God allows you to reach the point where you realize that no one else can truly help you. Then, just when hopelessness begins to settle into your heart, He sends relief in a way that removes every doubt. So whenever life backs you into a corner, remember this lesson. The sea in front of you may look impossible to cross, but for the one who controls the sea, making a path through it is never difficult. Keep walking in faith and keep believing that no obstacle is greater than God's power. When God decides to make a way, even oceans can't stand in His path. That is a promise for those who place their complete trust in Him. There are times in life when everything feels dark, when burdens become heavy and your soul feels as though it is drowning beneath helplessness. You begin to wonder whether relief will ever come and whether hope will ever shine again. The truth is that every season of darkness is temporary. God never leaves His servants without a way forward. His mercy is so great that He can turn the deepest darkness into light, and that transformation itself is a gift from Him. Darkness isn't always a punishment. Sometimes it is preparation. There are moments when God allows you to experience emptiness so that when guidance, peace, and blessings arrive, you will appreciate them with a grateful heart. The darkest part of the night comes just before dawn, yet only moments separate that darkness from the first light of a new day. In the same way, the trials surrounding you may simply be the final stretch before relief arrives. They may be the last test before a breakthrough that changes your life forever. When we speak about divine transformation, we are not only talking about changes in external circumstances. We are talking about the awakening of the heart. A person who once wandered through life without direction suddenly discovers the beauty of faith. A life that once felt empty begins to fill with purpose. This transformation isn't an accident. It is God's direct work in the hearts of those who sincerely seek Him. The journey from inner chaos to inner peace is one of the greatest gifts a person can receive. God brings people out of darkness and into light. These are not merely beautiful words. They describe a reality that countless people have experienced. Darkness represents confusion, pride, hopelessness, and spiritual blindness. Light represents faith, clarity, humility, and hope. Every person walks a journey from being lost in the distractions of this world to recognizing the lasting truth of surrendering to God. That journey is what defines true success. Think about the people who came before us. Many of them once lived in ways that harmed themselves and others, yet through faith, they became examples of guidance and inspiration for future generations. Their stories remind us that no soul is too lost for God to guide, and no past is too broken for Him to restore. When God places His light within a person's heart, everything begins to change. It doesn't only affect that person, it affects everyone around them as well. Most of the time, divine transformation begins quietly. The heart that once resisted prayer starts to soften. A tongue that once spoke harmful words begins to speak with kindness and gratitude. A mind that once chased endless distractions begins searching for deeper meaning. At first, these changes may seem small, but when they are nurtured, they grow into a light powerful enough to drive away every shadow. This is often how God guides a person, step by step, until certainty replaces confusion and peace replaces restlessness. Sometimes God removes worldly comforts to remind us where true peace can be found. When wealth disappears, when health declines, or when relationships fall apart, it can feel as though darkness is closing in around us. Yet those moments often become the very times when people turn to God more sincerely than ever before. What looked like a loss becomes the beginning of a spiritual gain. That is part of the wisdom behind many of life's struggles. They redirect us toward the only source of lasting peace. One of the most beautiful aspects of God's mercy is that the light He provides is not only for this life, but also for what comes after it. Those who remain patient through their trials will one day discover that their path has been illuminated far beyond anything they could see in this world. Knowing that every hardship carries eternal value gives people the strength to endure with dignity. Every tear shed in darkness has meaning. Nothing is wasted in the sight of God. When divine transformation takes place, a person's priorities begin to change. Instead of living for the approval of the world, they begin living for the approval of their Creator. They realize that people's praise is temporary, but God's pleasure is everlasting. Their heart becomes calmer. Their decisions become clearer. They develop an inner stability that remains firm even during difficult times. That stability is one of the signs of genuine faith and one of the marks of a heart that has been guided by God's light. At the same time, we must understand that moving from darkness to light requires effort. Just as a lamp needs oil to keep burning, the heart needs worship, sincerity, and remembrance of God in order to keep shining. These things are the fuel that keeps the light alive. Without them, the flame grows weak. With them, it burns brightly and benefits everyone who comes near it. This transformation also changes the way we view other people. Someone touched by God's light becomes less judgmental and more compassionate. They understand that everyone is on a different journey, and that guidance ultimately comes from God alone. Instead of looking down on those who are still struggling, they remember that they too once needed guidance. Because of that, they reach out with humility rather than superiority. Humility is one of the clearest signs of a heart that carries light. Darkness feeds on fear. Light feeds on hope. Evil thrives when people become convinced that their mistakes are too great, their sins are too many, and their future is beyond repair. But God promises that His mercy is greater than any sin. His forgiveness can transform even the darkest past into a bright new beginning. Simply believing that truth becomes a source of light in itself. It gives strength. It restores hope. It helps people stand up again no matter how many times they have fallen. When the heart experiences divine transformation, even the smallest blessings begin to feel extraordinary. They are no longer taken for granted. Gratitude becomes a daily habit. A person begins to notice God's mercy in every detail of life. That awareness brings joy to simple things and contentment with whatever God chooses to provide. It teaches us that true light is not found in possessions, but in perspective. Divine transformation is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing process. A person must continue feeding that light because life is full of distractions and temptations that can weaken it. Regular prayer, sincere supplication, and a conscious effort to stay away from wrongdoing help keep that light shining. Just as the body needs food to stay strong, the soul needs a constant connection with God. God's guidance is meant to touch every part of a person's life. Someone illuminated by His guidance doesn't only speak well. They listen well. They see clearly. They walk the right path. This kind of light reaches every part of their character. As a result, they become a source of positivity, encouragement, and goodness for the people around them. Sometimes divine transformation becomes most visible during hardship. When disaster strikes, some people collapse under the weight of it. Others emerge stronger, more resilient, and closer to God than before. The difference is faith. Those whose hearts are filled with light see hardship as a test rather than a punishment. Instead of running from God, they hold on to Him even more tightly. The darkness they face becomes the very thing that reveals strengths they never knew they possessed. Another part of this transformation is learning how to let go of resentment. Darkness feeds on anger and bitterness, but light grows through forgiveness. A heart filled with God's light doesn't cling to old wounds. Instead, it finds freedom in forgiving others, knowing that God's reward is far greater than any form of revenge. This emotional freedom is one of the gifts of divine guidance. It brings peace not only to the individual, but also to everyone around them. This change also affects the way a person views death. For those living in darkness, death often appears to be the ultimate loss. But for those living in God's light, it becomes a doorway to eternal life and a meeting with their Creator. They approach it not with panic, but with preparation. Their hearts have already experienced the peace that comes from being close to God. This perspective brings a sense of calm that cannot be explained by worldly standards. It is the tranquility of a soul anchored in faith. One of the greatest blessings of transformation is its ability to inspire others. When family members and friends witness someone move from heedlessness to sincerity, from pride to humility, they are reminded of God's power to guide and change hearts. That influence spreads far beyond one person. A single transformed life can inspire countless others to begin their own journey toward God. Even in the darkest sins, God provides a path back. The moment a person sincerely turns to Him and asks for forgiveness, the doors of mercy are opened wide. Repentance is one of the keys that unlocks divine transformation. No matter how far someone has drifted, a sincere return to God can completely change the direction of their life. This truth fills the heart with hope and protects it from despair. To truly experience divine transformation, a person must embrace humility. Pride blocks the light, while humility allows it to enter. Acknowledging our weakness before God, admitting our need for Him, and surrendering our ego are among the actions that invite His mercy into our lives. When a person humbles themselves before God, He raises them in honor. He blesses their life in ways that pride never could. The journey from darkness to light also changes the way a person sees time. In darkness, hours are often wasted on distractions and things that bring little value. But in the light, time becomes precious. Every moment is seen as an opportunity to draw closer to God, serve others, and prepare for what lies ahead. This awareness creates discipline, purpose, and a life that feels meaningful rather than empty. A person who has experienced this transformation develops resilience against negativity. The world may criticize them, mock them, or underestimate them, yet their heart remains steady because their anchor is God. This inner strength allows them to move through life's storms with dignity and confidence. It reminds us that true strength doesn't come from people's approval. It comes from our connection to God. Another sign of divine light is the ability to recognize hidden blessings. What others see as failure, they may see as guidance. What others see as loss, they may see as purification and growth. This perspective is rooted in a deep trust that God's plan is always better than our own. When a person lives with that understanding, disappointment becomes an opportunity for growth, and setbacks become stepping stones rather than barriers. This transformation also strengthens family relationships. A person touched by God's light becomes a source of comfort, guidance, and inspiration within their home. They lead by example. They teach not only through words, but through their actions. Their presence brings peace. Their choices reflect responsibility and wisdom. In this way, the light within them spreads into the environment around them and leaves an impact that can shape future generations. When God blesses someone with His light, even worship begins to feel different. Prayer no longer feels like an obligation. It becomes a source of relief and comfort. This transformation reveals that worship is not merely a duty. It is a privilege and a safe refuge in a world filled with challenges. Divine transformation also brings clarity in decision-making. Even when outcomes remain uncertain, a person moves forward with confidence, knowing that God never abandons those who rely on Him. This certainty reduces stress and allows them to live with greater peace. The light of faith also protects a person from despair when they make mistakes. They may stumble, but they don't remain on the ground. Instead of focusing on their weakness, they focus on God's mercy and find the strength to rise again. They learn that failure isn't falling down. Failure is refusing to get back up. Every time they return to God, their connection with Him becomes stronger and the light within them shines even brighter. Divine transformation encourages generosity. Someone who once focused only on accumulating wealth begins to give freely, understanding that generosity doesn't reduce blessings but often increases them. This generosity isn't limited to money. It extends to time, kindness, patience, and forgiveness. Acts of selflessness illuminate the soul and enrich life in ways material possessions never can. Those who are touched by divine light also free themselves from unnecessary comparisons. In darkness, people constantly measure themselves against others. In the light, they measure themselves against the standards God has set for them. Freedom from constant comparison brings peace, contentment, and focus. It allows a person to live authentically without being consumed by envy or insecurity. Transformation also changes the way a person approaches hardship. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" they begin asking, "What can I learn from this?" This shift in thinking turns pain into wisdom and struggle into strength. Every test becomes a teacher. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to grow. This attitude not only brings peace, but also accelerates spiritual growth. Divine transformation creates balance. A person no longer swings between extremes. Instead, they learn to walk a balanced path. That balance appears in worship, relationships, work, and everyday life. It reflects maturity, wisdom, and self-control, creating a life that is both meaningful and fulfilling. Another sign of transformation is the courage to stand for what is right. In darkness, fear of people often dominates the heart. In the light, reverence for God takes priority. This gives a person the strength to uphold justice, defend the vulnerable, and speak the truth even when it isn't popular. Their courage isn't rooted in pride. It is rooted in faith. That faith gives them a strength that remains steady even under pressure. Transformation also inspires gratitude for guidance itself. A person begins to realize that knowing God, believing in Him, and being guided toward truth are among the greatest blessings they could ever receive. This realization creates a life filled with purpose. Their actions become connected to a greater goal, seeking God's pleasure in everything they do. Their heart overflows with gratitude because they have been blessed with the light of faith. The journey from darkness to light is one of the greatest journeys a person can take. Every trial, every hardship, and every moment of weakness can become an opportunity to draw closer to God. What matters most is not where you started, but where you are headed. Through sincere effort, trust in God, and gratitude for His mercy, every soul can experience this transformation. And once that light enters a person's heart, it doesn't only change them, it begins to transform the world around them as well. Fear is one of the most powerful emotions that can paralyze a person. It quietly slips into the heart and whispers that failure is inevitable, that the future is uncertain, and that life's challenges are simply too overwhelming to face. Yet God reminds us that He is greater than every fear we carry. True courage isn't the absence of fear. It is the ability to place that fear in God's hands and keep moving forward with trust. When you let go of fear, you make room for faith to grow. Fear clouds the mind, but faith brings clarity. Fear makes obstacles look like permanent walls. Faith reveals them as doors waiting to be opened by God's command. The moment you place your worries in God's hands, your heart begins to experience a peace that no worldly assurance can provide. Fear grows when we forget who is truly in control. We worry about our provision, our health, our relationships, and our future because we forget that all of these things are ultimately in God's hands. Faith teaches us to hold firmly to trust. Whoever places their trust in God will find that He is enough. That reminder weakens the grip of fear and replaces it with quiet confidence. Think about the people who once stood before the sea while an enemy closed in behind them. Fear was a natural response, yet faith led them to believe that God would make a way. That moment teaches us something powerful. Faith doesn't pretend fear doesn't exist. Faith overcomes fear by focusing on God's presence and power rather than the size of the problem. In everyday life, fear appears in many forms. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of poverty, fear of illness, even fear of death. If left unchecked, these fears can consume a person's life. But faith redirects that energy toward trust in God. It reminds us that every test carries wisdom and that nothing reaches us without God's permission. When that truth settles in the heart, fear begins to lose its hold. The heart can't be completely filled with faith in God and overwhelming fear of the world at the same time. One will eventually push out the other. As your connection with God grows through prayer, trust, and remembrance, fear naturally loses its influence. Things that once seemed terrifying begin to feel manageable because your confidence no longer rests in yourself. It rests in the one who never abandons his servants. Fear is often one of the enemy's most effective tools. It wants people to feel powerless. It wants them to believe they won't survive their struggles and that there is no reason to hope. But God's message has always been a message of strength and encouragement. He reminds us that hardship never comes without purpose and that patience and trust lead to rewards beyond what we can imagine. Once you recognize fear for what it is, you stop feeding it. Instead, you begin feeding your faith through prayer, gratitude, and remembrance of God. Letting go of fear doesn't mean denying reality. It means facing reality while believing that God's power is greater than any situation you will ever encounter. A person still plans, works hard, and takes responsibility. But they don't allow their heart to become chained to anxiety. They understand that the outcome ultimately belongs to God and that whatever He chooses will be better than anything they could have planned for themselves. Sometimes fear comes from holding too tightly to things. We fear losing people, wealth, or status because we begin to believe those things define who we are. But the moment we loosen our grip and accept that everything ultimately belongs to God, fear begins to fade. Faith means knowing that what leaves your life wasn't meant to stay forever, and what is meant for you will never miss you. When fear is replaced by faith, even the smallest actions begin to feel different. A person wakes up each morning with hope instead of dread. They walk into challenges with a calm heart because deep inside they carry a simple conviction: God is with me. That quiet confidence strengthens their steps and gives them a resilience that often surprises even them. One of the beauties of faith is that it teaches us to see beyond the present moment. Fear focuses only on what is directly in front of us. It magnifies immediate problems and causes us to forget the bigger picture. Faith lifts our perspective beyond today's worries and reminds us that the greatest reward is with God. That change in perspective is often enough to turn despair into patience and fear into courage. Letting go of fear also means embracing acceptance. Fear often grows because we resist what has already been written for us. But when the heart learns to say, "I trust God's plan," acceptance brings peace. This surrender isn't weakness. It is strength. You are placing your life in the care of the one who knows you better than you know yourself. Think about how many dreams are abandoned because of fear. Not because they are impossible, but because fear convinces people they are impossible. Faith inspires action. It reminds us that effort matters more than guarantees and that God loves those who sincerely try. With that mindset, a person finds the courage to move forward even when the path ahead is unclear. Fear can also dominate relationships. People fear betrayal, loneliness, rejection, and heartbreak. But faith shifts trust away from people and places it where it belongs, on God. It teaches us that hearts are in His hands and that no one can truly harm or benefit us except by His permission. That realization brings freedom. You can love deeply and care sincerely without becoming emotionally chained to outcomes. Your ultimate trust belongs to God alone. Fear of poverty is one of the most common struggles people face. Many hesitate to give because they worry there won't be enough left for tomorrow. Yet faith reminds us that God's provision never runs dry. When people truly believe that, they become generous without fear. They give freely because they trust the one who provides. Fear of failure is another barrier that holds many people back. Some never even try because they are afraid they won't succeed. But faith teaches that success is not defined only by results. It is defined by sincerity, effort, and perseverance. A person who strives with a sincere heart is never truly a failure in God's sight. That understanding breaks the power of fear and replaces it with determination. At its core, fear thrives in the unknown. We fear tomorrow because we can't control it. But faith reminds us that tomorrow is already known to God. And God never places a burden on a soul beyond its ability to bear. When that truth settles into the heart, the unknown no longer feels threatening. Instead, it becomes an opportunity to witness God's wisdom unfold in ways we couldn't have predicted. We want immediate answers and immediate results. We worry that waiting too long will somehow destroy us. But faith teaches patience. It reminds us that God's timing is perfect and that every delay may carry a hidden mercy we can't yet see. Letting go of fear means learning to embrace the waiting season with hope, trusting that what has been written for you will reach you at exactly the right time. There is also the fear of people's judgment. Many live their lives trapped by what others might think. They hide their beliefs, silence their convictions, or compromise their values because they are afraid of criticism. But faith reminds us that the only judgment that truly matters is God's. When a person lets go of the fear of public opinion, they become free. They stop living for temporary approval and start living with sincerity and purpose. Even the fear of death becomes softer through faith. A person of faith doesn't see death as the end of existence. They see it as a transition to another life and a return to their Creator. This perspective doesn't remove sadness, but it removes despair. It allows a person to live fully without being paralyzed by the certainty that life will one day end. Faith transforms what once seemed frightening into motivation for living a righteous and meaningful life. Letting go of fear requires practice. Just as muscles grow stronger through training, faith grows stronger through consistent effort. Prayer strengthens it. Remembering God's promises strengthens it. Reflecting on His blessings strengthens it. Over time, a person begins to notice that fears which once felt overwhelming now seem much smaller when compared to God's greatness. It is important to understand that fear itself is natural. It is part of being human. The real question is whether we allow fear to control us. Faith becomes the anchor that keeps us steady when waves of fear crash against us. Without that anchor, we are pulled in every direction. With it, we remain standing even in the middle of life's strongest storms. Letting go of fear also opens the door to gratitude. Instead of focusing on everything that could go wrong, a person begins focusing on everything that has already gone right. Gratitude strengthens faith. It places fear in its proper perspective and reminds us of how many blessings God has already given us. This shift changes not only the heart, but the quality of life itself. A person who lives with faith becomes a source of inspiration for others. Their calmness, patience, and trust influence family members, friends, and everyone around them. People are naturally drawn to someone whose heart is anchored in faith rather than controlled by fear. In this way, personal transformation becomes a light that benefits an entire community. Sometimes God allows fear to visit us so that we remember our need for Him. This isn't a punishment. It is a reminder. Fear humbles us and reminds us that we are dependent on our Creator. When fear pushes us closer to God, even that fear becomes a hidden blessing. Faith also teaches that every effort to overcome fear is rewarded. Every moment spent trusting God instead of surrendering to anxiety carries value. Every time a person chooses faith over panic, they are strengthening their relationship with God. Knowing this encourages us to keep choosing trust, even when fear hasn't completely disappeared. Letting go of fear doesn't mean becoming reckless. Faith encourages balance. We are taught to take the necessary precautions while placing our trust in God. There is wisdom in doing everything within your ability and then leaving the outcome in His hands. Faith and effort are not opposites. They work together. When both are present, fear loses much of its power. The stronger a person's faith becomes, the more resilient they become in the face of fear. Faith builds a shield around the heart, a shield that nothing can truly penetrate unless God allows it. It strengthens a person from within so deeply that even when they are surrounded by challenges, they continue to feel secure. This sense of security doesn't come from circumstances. It comes from the peace that only God can place inside a soul. When faith begins to overcome fear, Decision-making becomes easier. A person no longer remains trapped in endless cycles of doubt and hesitation. Instead of being consumed by endless what-if questions, they move forward with confidence, trusting that God will guide their steps. This confidence is not arrogance. It is clarity born from faith. Letting go of fear also brings joy. Fear drains happiness, but faith restores it. Even during difficult times, a person can still smile because they trust that God's plan is unfolding exactly as it should. This joy is not dependent on circumstances. It comes from a connection with God, which makes it far more stable than temporary happiness. One of the greatest gifts of faith is peaceful rest. Fear steals sleep. It fills the mind with endless worries and unanswered questions. But the person who places their affairs in God's hands finds comfort in knowing that God never sleeps and never stops caring for His creation. That trust becomes the pillow upon which they rest. Letting go of fear also means letting go of the illusion of control. People naturally want control over everything, but faith reminds us that ultimate control belongs to God alone. Accepting this truth frees us from carrying burdens we were never meant to carry. It allows us to live in the present with greater peace and confidence. Faith also teaches us to replace fear with prayer. Whenever anxiety begins to rise, we turn to God. We speak to Him. We ask for His help. We place our concerns before Him, knowing that He hears every whisper of the heart. That act alone often eases fear because it reminds us that we are never truly alone. At the end of the day, fear is temporary, but faith has lasting value. Every moment spent strengthening faith is an investment that benefits both this life and the life to come. Fear will pass, but the light of faith remains. It continues to guide a person through every challenge, every uncertainty, and every season of life. So let go of fear and hold tightly to faith. Trust that God is greater than your worries, stronger than your enemies, and more merciful than your mistakes. When faith fills your heart, no darkness can truly overcome you, and no storm can ultimately destroy you. With God by your side, you can rise above fear and continue moving forward with courage, peace, and confidence.